Hey, what's going on, Mistwood Publishing peeps? It's me, SR Murray here for another Mistwood Publishing video. And if you could, please leave a like down below and subscribe if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's get into today's topic. So if you don't know, we have this big campaign going on Indiegogo to help raise funds to print the book. It is purely to raise the money for the actual printing. Everything else is already done and taken care of, or will be by the time that the campaign ends. So today I wanted to go through and kind of show you like a super exclusive behind the scenes look at how things are done. I think for people that want to know what exactly all it is that Mistwood Publishing does, it's more than just me writing books. I really do all of it. I work out all the deals with the printers. I work out all the deals with illustrators. I do all the shipping even. I do really all of it. So I wanted to give people kind of a behind the scenes look at how I handle illustrations and how I look at them and kind of the process of what that looks like for me. Normally this would just be for Patreon members, but since we have the Indiegogo campaign going on right now, I thought it would be maybe beneficial to kind of show this process to help gain a wider audience. Alright, so I'm going to minimize myself here so that we can see the screen. And so I start out with an idea for a book cover. I always like to have my covers be an actual scene in the book so that while you're reading the book, you'll stumble across that scene and be like, wait, what? And you'll like double take and you'll be like, well, this is actually a scene in the book. And that will excite you. And I know it always did for me whenever I was reading a book. I know that this book cover we see right here, The Thousand Orcs, by R.A. Salvatore, this was really the cover that introduced me to the idea of actually reading fantasy. I saw it in like a Walgreens and it really stuck with me, and then later in life I was like, I'm gonna find that book, and I did, and I realized that it was like the 20th book in the series, and I bought book 1 and then I read all of them. They actually have them all on a bookshelf. They take up a whole row and then some over there on my bookshelf. But this cover specifically has always really stuck out to me as really, really awesome. Obviously, it had a profound impact on me, especially, and I really love it. I love this guy back here with this double sword, just like, yeah! And then this guy with the eye patch. It's just, I really, really like this piece, like a lot. It's probably... it is my second favorite book cover that I've ever seen. My first favorite is actually the third book in this trilogy, which the Saga 2 cover will be largely based off of that one, whereas Saga 1 I'm kind of very, very loosely basing it off of this one. Beautiful covers. Oddly, the second cover in this trilogy is kind of lackluster. It's just Drizzt walking in the snow. But this and the third book cover are absolutely astonishing. So this here was my little drawing of like where I see the characters. You have enemies, E for enemies, where the barcode will go. Here's where the Armriller would go. Have a little lift there, And the idea would be that, Ruth would be decapitating somebody, Talia would be stabbing somebody, and Narbad would be getting somebody. And I guess in this sketch I had him throwing the axe. To kind of say that, I wanted this to be a battle scene. And this is the actual file that I sent to the illustrator as directions for doing this cover. So that's why I'm showing it to you. This is just to go through like background of kind of what I wanted. I want like a snow landscape. This book, the main villain is essentially, to simplify, it would be like kind of like the god of ice and winter. and he kind of has this evil plot to, he already has this thing going on where it's called the Great Winter, where essentially he has made Astra have these excruciatingly long and brutal winters. And his plan is to kind of like further that and make it, this is just the beginning. Like that's just the first step in his plan, the Great Winter. His ultimate plan is to essentially make it into like a super ice age. And so there's a lot of snow involved in the storyline. It's a lot of very cold environments involved. So I wanted there to be snow. I wanted there to be a snow battlefield. So you can see the entire field should be covered with snow, blizzard, a lot of white. Don't take the positions of the character on my sketch too seriously. I'm a terrible artist, which is very true. And this was just me trying to figure it out. And here's me just kind of pointing out this was a cover that I had done for Saga 4, which I ended up deciding not to publish right away. I decided to do Saga 1 first instead. That to be said, I already have Saga 4 written, and I expect to just make a few minor changes to it. One of the reasons why I waited was so that I didn't paint myself into any kind of a box as far as continuity and consistency. I still love this cover though. This will still be used as the ebook cover for Saga 4 because I still love this artwork. That's Zach Bonebreaker, which you meet in this book as well. But at this point on the document, I'm just pointing out that let's zoom out a little bit. This is a little too close. That I want snow. I like the specific flakes. This is another cover that I love by Todd Lockwood for the Drizzt series. Probably my third favorite cover ever that I've ever seen. I just really love the snow and the dramatic and the coloring. I really love it. The Saga 6 cover will actually have a very... I think about my covers a lot. So I have like a rough idea of what I want for each one, to be honest with you, at any given moment. And it's usually changing. But the Saga 6 one, that was the first book I ever planned to do. And so I have a pretty solid idea of what I want the cover to look like. And it's going to be kind of like this, but in a forest. I really like it. And there'll be gray elves around. With Alion, Orso, and Aeswin, who is going to be his gray elf friend, female friend. You've seen art of her, I'm sure, on my social media and stuff. So then I also wanted to emphasize that I wanted blood. So my books are fairly violent, and there's blood involved. It is rated R for, it would be rated R for blood and violence. Certainly, people get disemboweled and, it's very violent. So I wanted there to be blood, and that was something that always amazed me and caught my eye, even as I think I was actually probably in like 6th grade when I first saw this, 5th or 6th grade. And like the fact that there was blood on the weapons was like, whoa, you can do that? That's amazing. And so you can see like the blood on his sword, you can see the blood on the ground coming out of the dead people on the ground. And my books are bloody like that. I wanted that to be a part of the cover as well. I wanted the cover to represent the book properly. So just kind of pointing out that I wanted there to be some blood in it, right? So then we go into the characters. I always go through and give a description of each character that's going to be on the cover and kind of what I expect from him. Thankfully, Narbad had already been drawn by this artist, and probably like 50, no joke, probably 50% of the reason why I had him do this artwork of Narbad was so that this cover would be easier on him. Because with Narbad, he's the main character, and so he's going to have a very specific look, and working out what that look is going to be very hard and difficult and stressful. Like, no, it needs to look like this, or no, it needs to look like that. Like, it's very specific, which can get very frustrating for an artist, understandably so. And so I wanted to make sure that he knew how to draw Narbad before we got to the cover. Because when you're dealing with a cover of this magnitude, you know, there's a lot of moving parts and it's already going to be stressful for the artist. You don't want to make it any more stressful than it has to be. And so I had him draw Narbed before months before. I think this was like back in like November or something like that. I honestly don't remember, but it was a while ago. So important to note that the above sketch, I know that I'm terrible, is just a suggestion, and I'm really glad that he did do something different with Narbed's positioning. I really prefer what he did with it than myself. Talia, the High Elf Princess. A lot of you got her on the personality quiz. She's a very lovable character. Talia is, she's a High Elf character. She wields just one sword. I wanted her beside Narbed stabbing somebody through the throat, and I'm pretty happy with what he did with her as well. And then Talia is supposed to have very curly blonde hair, so kind of just giving him a few examples of hair and face that would be acceptable for that character, kind of how the facial features that I envision for the character. This is really the hair that she's supposed to have, with more of a face like this. Then we have Ruth, and essentially with him, I've always imagined him with like a suit of bronze gold chainmail and scales, you know, like scale armor, along with a sword and shield. And he actually gets the sword and shield from a dwarf king in the storyline. And yeah, he's supposed to be kind of like the arrogant brother of Talia. He doesn't really like Narbed that much, but he's a really good fighter. And I wanted to have his outfit be largely inspired by this outfit from the Drizzt homeland, except for this crotch piece. I've always hated that. But yeah, I didn't really have any specific facial models for Ruth, just that he's supposed to be a blonde, arrogant high elf that has gold/bronze looking armor and red clothing. So I kind of left a lot of it up to the illustrator. You don't want to make every character be super specific to what you want them to look like, because that can be frustrating for the artist. So I like to include characters that I don't necessarily have a very strong desire for them to look a certain way. Although sometimes that can be hard to do. Ultimately, you're paying money for the product, and you're going to have to be assertive, because the artist obviously isn't going to want to work harder than they have to, especially for a commissioned work where it's not just their own creativity going wild. So, there is a healthy balance between correction and letting them have freedom. That's something that's certainly been interesting. Then I said I'd like some kind of like leather shoulder stuff and blonde hair like Legolas there. And a red cloak. Now, with the battle scene, there needed to be monsters. There should be a Armriller in the background. I really wanted, I have 3 evil species in my books. The Wendigos, the Armriller, and the Lifts. And I really wanted the cover to kind of tackle all 3 of them and give people a visual for exactly what they're supposed to look like. So Armriller is supposed to have like troll-like bodies, like Lord of the Rings troll-like bodies with the head of a moray eel. That is a monster that I just came up on my own. I just thought of it one day and I was like, you know what, that's actually really cool and I like that idea. So let's go with it. And they're supposed to be kind of like my version of the Lord of the Rings troll. They're not very intelligent, and they're pretty simple. Lifts are kind of like, well, another name for a lift in my book is surface goblin. That to say that they look very goblinish. They can either look like a traditional goblin like you see here, or they can look like this guy here. They're supposed to have very, very pale, like semi-translucent skin, very long ears, and very circular eyes, usually wearing very simple black leather and chainmail. Some lifts can have a bluish skin color, and some of them can look a lot bigger and more. There's something called an abyssal lift, which is basically essentially, I don't want to say my version of Orakai, but to keep it simple, it's like a more beefy version of a lift. And then we have the Wendigos. Now, Wendigos are really difficult because, to be honest with you, my own idea of what they look like has changed probably like 6 times. Like, if you read the Sylvan Mist, you'll notice their descriptions are going to be a little bit different. They're still largely the same. They're still white maned, sometimes black or brown maned, but mostly white maned beasts with tusks. You know, that's still kind of like the main characteristic of them. But I kind of want them to have this jackal-like face, or almost like a piggish face, kind of like some of these guys in here. Like a Wendigo can have a face kind of like this, but they can also have a face kind of more jackalish. I wanted there to be some kind of variety to them. The main characteristic of a Wendigo is that they're slightly bigger than humans, quite a bit bigger than lifts, although they could come in a variety of sizes. Obviously, they're not going to be all the same size, just like humans aren't, and you'll see that on the cover here in a second. But yeah, you know, they're basically just pale, white-haired creatures in kind of Orakai orc armor with tusks, right? I love this art by Jay Wigley. I love it. So that's what I sent to the artist. That's what I sent to my Russian artist. And his first rendition of it was this. All right, so this is what you'll see on the campaign in a lot of spots. This is the results that I got. And you know what I'll tell you? It is a very, very good first sketch. Now, he was a little upset whenever I sent him my recommendations for fixes because he puts a lot of time and effort into this, and he didn't, he has his vision of it, right? But the problem is you really can't tell which ones are Wendigos and which ones are lifts, and that's really a problem for me that needed to be fixed. Although I do really like this guy. I think this guy looks like a very good example of a lift with a bluish darker skin color. But you can't really tell what the lifts are like. Talia is looking like she's pretty thick. It's a fantasy book, and the armor she's wearing is actually a necklace that she gets from a character named Neris, who's kind of like the goddess, if you will. She's not really a goddess, but to keep it simple, she's kind of like the goddess of attraction and lust. And so she has a necklace which projects armor. The actual armor is the necklace projecting a layer of magical protection. The appearance of the armor isn't, think about who it's made by. It is intentionally designed to look a little bit more, not practical. It's supposed to be very pretty looking, not just, in terms of like the legs showing, but also in terms of like the ornamentation of the armor. It's supposed to be very elaborate and beautiful. And so, we have to have that fixed. The armor here is really thin and too short for an armor. This guy is actually a pretty good Wendigo, minus the tusks. And so would this guy be. He'd be a pretty good Wendigo. I felt like this guy was supposed to be a Wendigo, but he's pretty small for one. But then again, Wendigos could totally come in different sizes. This guy, I didn't like him at all, to be honest. Or this guy. They just don't look anything like lifts at all. Lifts shouldn't really have pig-looking faces like this guy, or like traditional they really shouldn't have traditional goblin-like faces necessarily. You know, like, not even like Lord of the Rings goblins, but like the traditional goblin, like from like Skyrim and stuff, or I should say Oblivion. They shouldn't look like that. So this was my correction of that, right? Let's zoom out again. Now, you know, I put it in there. I like things to look nice. I made sure to put things that I liked, things that, you know, general comments about what I wanted, you know, about what I liked, and then I go into the specifics. With Narbad, I was like, you are the vast majority correct. Just make sure that his face still looks like, his face is supposed to resemble Sean Bean, you know, like Ned Stark. Not a younger looking Sean Bean, because orcs are supposed to be a little bit more wrinkly. So although Narbad will look, from like human standards, he'll look like he's probably like in his 50s. But by an orc standards, he looks like he's like 25. Because orcs are supposed to be uglier than humans. And I do want my orcs to look more noble and more human-like than maybe people are used to. But I don't want them to be, you know, super ugly. I don't want them to be super handsome either. Because my orcs were made by the Zeus / Odin / God figure to be specifically made to defend the other races. Like, they are made and bred specifically to be soldiers, period. You know, that's their purpose. Which I think leads to a lot of really cool character arcs and character developments. But, you know, he's pretty much exactly perfect right here. I just felt his face was looking really different. And my illustrator would say, oh yeah, well, you know, it's just because it's the first sketch. But I've worked with him enough to realize that if I didn't point it out here, that it wouldn't have changed. You know, like I know him well enough to know that. Then Talia, I was honestly very, very impressed with Talia's iteration of this first draft. The face, I felt, was very spot on, and it's very, very rare that I like a female's face at first. You know, it usually requires a few, like, it's not really there yet, you know, but I felt like he captured the face and the hair, except for I wanted to see more of the hair, as you can see here, from the beginning. And then I wanted to fix this so that it was more book accurate, right? I don't like my female characters to look like they weigh 200 pounds. It's a fantasy book. I don't want Ruth over here looking like he weighs 200 pounds either. And I don't want Narbad looking like a fatty either, you know? I want my male and female characters looking very athletic and healthy and fit. You know? It's just the way I like it. With Ruth, I kind of wanted this fully circular shield, but he kind of made a good argument for why that shouldn't be the case. And I wanted to change this to red and make this sword thinner because Ruth is very nationalistic. And so he would not wear any colors that were not his nation's colors. And that's just plain and simple. Now, he did convince me again to keep the shield this way. And he also, you know, I didn't bring anything up. This is a full-on breastplate that he's wearing here. And his hair is also a lot looser than I probably would have originally, you know, if I had this artistic skill, I wouldn't have drawn him that way. But that being said, you know, part of the whole process of this is to, you know, you don't always, you know, you're willing to take some of their ideas as well. And to be honest, I went into the story in the book and changed, whenever the Dwarf King gives him the shield and sword, I changed it to also include a breastplate. And that's just the way it is, you know? Because well, one, I like it. And two, you just got to be flexible like that. And I did kind of was like, hey, can we get him decapitating? You know, the other two are getting some action. I wanted Ruth to get on some of that action because he's really probably the best fighter in the group. The villains, just kind of talking about how I wanted the, you know, giving him the specific dimensions of how tall I want the Armriller to be and kind of the body thickness, skin color, I didn't really want the shield in there, and Armriller doesn't really need a shield. It would weigh too much to be practical. And I thought a really big mace like this, yeah, the shield would be impractical. A giant mace is fine. Would look good. And then I just kind of point out that lifts should resemble more of this, and that Wendigos should resemble more of this, and to not forget the tusks. And then I kind of had the idea, well, I kind of went through and looked at which of the specific villains I liked the look of, that I thought were pretty close to accurate. And I mentioned that I really like this guy, because I do. I don't know why. I just really like his face. And then the white circles mean, you know, characters that I felt indifferent about. And I kind of mentioned that this guy I think is supposed to be a Wendigo, but he doesn't really look like one. But I do really like the sword and all that. I think that it looks nice. I do say in here that he would probably make a better Lif than a Wendigo. But he ended up just changing it to look more like a Wendigo. And then kind of to give him some direction on Wendigo design, I thought I would include this little guy here. You know, you put tusks on this guy and he looks pretty Wendigo-ish, you know. So I thought, let's change this guy to be this cool Wendigo here. I think I'd really like that. And then I wanted to include the main villain of the book, Is, right, the god of ice. I've had several people draw him, and this right here was the main inspiration behind the character. But I thought, you know, dark blue armor, and he's supposed to have these really, his most memorable feature is his eyes. So this is actually an illustration of him that the Duran did for me. But I really like the drawing, but I have a few critiques with it, mainly being the cloak. So I thought, you know what, let's have the Russian give his shot at it and see what he can do with it. And so that was my second round of suggestions, or I guess my first round of suggestions. And then I got this as the result. And so here we can see a lot of the changes done here. We can see that this guy is starting to resemble that more. I'll probably end up asking him to include a shield right here, just to, and maybe widening his stomach a bit. But I did, if you were really paying attention to the writing, I did ask to add blood to Narbad's axes. He added the tusks. Narbad's face is resembling Sean Bean more. Ruth is in more red. His sword is thinner and more golden. He's decapitating the guy. Talia, we have more hair. Some fixing here, not fully there, and he changed this to red, even though I went back on it. The first time I edited, I was like, she needs to have a red skirt, because originally, in the book, she has a red skirt. But again, I ended up liking his blue design more, and I was like, well, they both have red on, and he has green, and, this blue, this dark blue, maybe, difference in color would look nice. This guy continues to look awesome. You can see the changes on this guy a lot. This guy still looks exactly the same, and that irked me a little bit. This guy's looking like a Wendigo. This is a Wendigo right here. So just the tusks missing, that's it. And he does fix that later. And then we have our Is in the background, which I think he's looking pretty good. And then we have our Armriller, who looks dramatically better. His head is a little circular and bulbous, so I do kind of point out to fix that. This guy's still looking kind of weird to me. But you'll notice the skin color has changed on a lot of these guys so that their skin colors match the appropriate type of skin. So then I sent him this email. I took it out of the email format because there was some information on there that doesn't need to be public, such as pricing and such. payment options and PayPal account information. So I said very good, much better, and much appreciated. Again, not the first one of bad, just a little off the design, which is natural. And then I give him a few corrections on lifts, and I had attached screenshots of the art that we were just looking at, and I circled this guy and this guy as still looking very not lift-ish. And I probably should have circled a third guy, but he ended up fixing it on his own, amazingly enough. So I just circled a few of them, said they still don't look very lift-like, so if you could fix that. Then I bring out, I actually said you could leave Talia's colors blue, and that she's still looking a little thick around the waist, but that was all for her. And I'd still like to see more of her hair. I said Is is looking really awesome, but his armor and crown should be very dark, like midnight blue. The ear miller looks great, but let's thin his head down. And then don't forget Narbad's beard. And then I was sure to give him compliments. If you were really to pause the video and read all the stuff I write, I really try to include a lot of positive feedback, because I think that you want to keep a positive feel to it. So then this morning I got this update, which is what encouraged me to make this video today. So, and this is where I gave him the okay to go ahead and do the finish. And I gave him the first half of the payment, which is pretty sizable. So you can see that the armriller is spot on now. His head is not so fat. His teeth are, gross looking. Sometimes armriller, not always, but sometimes armriller have really long hairs dangling from their jaws. I don't think I'm going to have him add that on this armriller, personally. I think I'm going to actually have Nate Heiler end up drawing an armriller and including the hairs on that one. And I'll probably include that inside of it'll be like an interior art piece on one of my books, maybe Saga 2. Haven't decided yet. But yeah, this armriller is really good. It's really perfect. Then we have Is in the background. And you can see the armor color is coming together. And the crown colors are looking awesome. And the cloak's looking awesome. This guy now has his tusks. This guy has finally gotten his face fixed to look much more lift-like. And boy, does he look more lift-like. I mean, this is spot on perfect lift kind of design. And so I didn't even really ask for that on the last round of corrections, and so that really impressed me and made me really happy. This guy's looking a lot more hairy and more gangly and more sinister, and he's got the tusks. This guy's finally got his face corrected. I still hope he does something cooler with the spearhead, but that's me. This guy's shield continues to, I don't know, I like the shield. This guy looks pretty much the same. So is this guy. This guy's still getting his head cut off. Ruth's still looking awesome. Talia finally looking like the way she should. We'll see how the hair turns out on the final. I might have to tell him to make it more curly on the final. It's really hard to tell on this version, on this unfinished version if it's going to be curly or not. Narbad with the beard. Probably going to have to add a little bit of hair right there. And this guy was fixed as well. Still don't fully know what exactly he's doing, but that'll be fixed whenever it's all clarified. So, I love this little blood drip here. And by the way, I didn't even actually tell him what color of her magic was, but he got the color spot on. I didn't even have to tell him. So that is essentially the newest update. And so now, if we go through looking at what it, the different stages, we go from my drawing, which was horrible, to this, which is pretty darn amazing for the first sketch, and then you see the changes there. Look at the Armoriller's head. You know, look at that change. This guy changes into Is. Narbad like shifts a little bit to the side. This guy gets getting beheaded, and then we get to today's change. You can see things starting to come together. You can see he worked on the background a little bit more. Look at this guy's head. Look at the change. That's pretty awesome. Looks like he actually changed some of Is's armor as well. Yeah, this guy has his tusks added on. Look at Talia's change. Much better. And you know what? She's still not, you know, she's not unrealistically thin. I feel like this is pretty realistically thin, you know? So that's how I do it, you know. Then he's going to go on the next 5 or so days, and he's going to put his finishing touches on the cover. Crazy to me. I love watching it. He's going to put his finishing touches, and what that means is he's going to be adding quite a bit more detail. Like, there won't be any fuzziness. It will be very clear, and kind of like how you see the Narbad illustration, it will be very pristine. There won't be these giant unrefined areas to the extent that you see here, like all this and this will be refined. The blood will be refined, maybe a bit darker too. You know, it all look very nice. And that is how I do it. That is the process. It's a long video, but I think it's pretty interesting stuff. And we have probably the words will be up here. My uncle's pretty good at integrating the cover into like the names and the titles and such. So there'll probably be a little bit of overlap with the axe. I don't know what he's going to do with my name down here. Probably the book description will be up here, and the barcode will probably be, I would imagine, against this guy's back, and the author's signature will probably be right there. That's my guess. Anyway, this is what I got for today's video. It's a longer video, but I think it's pretty interesting and pretty exciting to look at, kind of seeing the cover coming together, and yeah, just talking about it super casually. I prefer to do videos where I'm just myself. I'm my normal talking self. I don't really like doing all the super high energy stuff, although I know people like that more. But you know, I do have videos like that, and you know what, I like to also have videos like this where it's really just, it's me. You know, this isn't, you know, this isn't fake Shay. This is the real me. And just sitting here with my Longhorns hat, you know, my tee, and my new Bonfire Mistwood hoodie. So comfortable. If you missed out on that, I'm sorry. These Bonfire clothes are really awesome. Now I have a Mistwood hoodie and t-shirt in all 3 of the Mistwood colors, which is dark gray like this, green that you see in the background, and navy blue. So yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day. Please back the project on Indiegogo. That will be in the link of this video, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. We got lots of great tiers on there. Really something for anybody. If you like art, there's art. If you like just the book, there's mugs, there's a hoodie. There's so much that you could take and get and claim. Please take a look at it. There's a personality quiz on there to find out which of my characters you are most like. And it really is an awesome, awesome campaign. I put a lot of work into it. Have a lovely day. Peace out and take care of yourself.